Okay, Grandma, go ahead and start.
Okay. Uh, do I have to say my name?
Well, I think we know who you are, so
Oh.
you don't have to. You can say your whole name.
I'm Cemoria, Alida, Maria, Lindy, Frankman. My mother knew I was going to be a big girl, so they gave me lots of names. I was named after my Aunt Cemoria, and I was named after my mother, and I was named after the midwife, Maria, and of course my dad's name was Lindy, and Frankman, my husband's name. And I was born May 5th, 1911, in Kickerville, Washington. That's just a small, little tiny province. It's connected with Pleasant Valley, and about after 2 years, why my mother and father bought a home in Pleasant Valley, and just a 2-bedroom home, and we lived there for a few years, and then he enlarged, put a great big kitchen and a bathroom and a pantry on that home, and seemed large to me when I was smaller, but when I went back after about 40, 50 years, why the kitchen was very, very small. And I used to set the table for Mama all the time, and the dishes were in the pantry, and I used to skip from the pantry to the kitchen table. And my mother and father both said, "Can't you walk instead of skipping? You're wearing out the bottoms of your shoes too fast." So I tried to, but I was very active and had lots of ambition, and I just wished I had half that ambition now. And I was the 7th child. I had, there are 9 brothers and sisters. I had 2 sisters and 5 brothers older than myself. And then I had 2 younger brothers. After I was born, they had 2 younger brothers. So we had a real nice family. When I was 6 years old, I had sore eyes. The doctors didn't seem to be able to do anything for them. I used to put Argyrol in them every morning, and my eyes were all brown instead of blue, but I couldn't see very well, and they hurt all the time. So one day my mother took me to a doctor in Bellingham, and they had a little pill. They called it a homeopathic pill, and she told Mother to soak it in water and then bathe my eyes 3 or 4 times a day with that water and the pill in the water. And my mother did, and my eyes got better. Didn't hurt anymore. So when I was 7 years old, I got to start school in the 1st grade. And I just loved school. And I got A's up until, in all the grades, until it was just 3 grades met in one room. And I was sure happy when I got to go upstairs and meet with the bigger kids. And when in 7th and 8th grade, we're upstairs. And in the 7th grade, my grades didn't do very well. I went down to a B instead of having A's all the time, or A pluses. And so the teacher talked to me, and he said, "You better study a little harder." And I got interested in baseball. I just loved baseball. I was always captain of the baseball team. And every team that we played outside of, we played Custer and other teams, and we always won. Even the parents used to come and sit on the fence and watch us play baseball. Especially a man that ran a store there right by the school. He'd always come and sit on the fence. "Come on, Cemoria," he'd say, "throw that ball." It was exciting. And my mother had made me, my mother made all of our clothes, and she had made me a pair of a black satin dress, not a sateen dress, and black bloomers to match. And every time I played baseball, I wore that because it was trimmed in yellow. And then everything, when I'd run or anything, all they'd see was the black. I was quite modest. And let's see, we used to walk to school. was a mile and a quarter. And I just loved to walk to school, especially if it snowed. Then coming home, we'd lay down and make butterflies in the snow.
Uh-huh.
And let's see, my mother was a real wonderful homemaker, and about 2 or 3 times a week she'd bake an oven full of bread, about 8 loaves of bread, and it didn't take the 9 of us to devour that bread very long. And as soon as we got home from school, we'd all have a piece of hot bread with butter and sugar on it. Oh, that was good.
Ooh, yeah.
And in the fall of the year, we always brought our lunches. But in the fall of the year when, to school, but in the fall of the year when it was cold, why, the farmers around there would donate milk and whatever else they used in their soup, potatoes and corn and things. And the teachers made the soup for us, and that was really good.
Teachers made the soup?
Uh-huh. They'd make the soup. And we had, my favorite was corn soup.
So it depended on how good your teacher was at making soup, whether
Yeah.
it was a good school lunch.
Yeah,
Huh?
yeah. It was really good. The corn soup was delicious.
What did you like doing the best in school? What was your favorite subject?
Oh, I like reading and writing and arithmetic. I just love those.
Did you?
Mm-hmm.
And you were an avid reader, weren't you?
Yeah, I still am.
Yeah. Well, what were, now you used to say you used to rush home and grab that Relief Society magazine before your mom or something?
Yeah, when we got the Relief Society magazine, I'd rush home and read it. Especially in the summertime, I'd be the first to get it and read all of the articles in it and the stories. If it was cold, well, I'd lay behind our big Monarch stove in the kitchen and get a pillow and lay and read that. And I just loved that magazine.
Did you have any other magazines that you guys got at your house?
Yeah, we had the Saturday Evening Post, and we had the Country Farmer, I believe it was.
Did you like either of those?
Yeah, I loved all the stories. I read them from cover to cover.
Did you?
Uh-huh. But we didn't get it, well, after I got quite old, well, then we got a newspaper, but they didn't have a newspaper delivery. And Dad subscribed by mail to the newspaper, and it was a day or 2 old when we got it, but we still enjoyed it because that's about all the news we had. We didn't have a radio or anything. And then when I was about 17, why, the kids all pitched together and got them a console radio, and we just loved that. And Dad, when I was about 12, well, he brought home an Edison phonograph so we could have music in our home. And when I started high school, I used to stay home a day a week and help do the washing and ironing. And sometimes I'd count 24 shirts that I had to iron in 1 week. That's a lot of shirts.
Now you didn't. How did they used to starch the shirts in the old days? They don't do it the same way that they do now, where we just spray on starch.
No,
How did you do
they
it?
used to cook the starch, and
You just take cornstarch and water. Or?
no, they had the regular starch that they used, regular clothes starch that they used, and mixed it with the water and cooked it, and then we'd add more water to that and starch the clothes that way.
So you just would sprinkle it on the clothes?
No, we dipped that in the clothes.
Oh,
After
you
they
dip the
were
clothes
uh-huh.
in there?
Yeah, after they were rinsed, we dip them in that, and then hang them up to dry, and then after they were dry, we'd bring them in and sprinkle them and get, with water and iron them.
Oh, so you didn't wait till the shirt was dry, you just...
Yeah.
Huh, interesting. Now, go back to when you were younger and you used to borrow your sister's clothes.
Yeah. When I was 12, I was as big as I am now. Not as fat, but I was tall. Mm-hmm. And my feet were big and everything. So one morning I thought, well, I'm not going to wear these old high-top Oxfords that I had. I didn't like them anyway. And so I went upstairs, and my sister wasn't in school or anything. She just stayed home. And I came down clumping around downstairs with her shoes on. And I asked my mother if I could wear them to school, and my mother said, no, go take those off. So that made me mad, and I just kicked one of the shoes with my left foot. It went through our window. Right by the sofa. We had a little sofa in the kitchen that Dad used to sleep on when he had took his nap during the day, and it went through the window. So they told me I had to pay for that window, and I did. Every penny I got, why, I saved it and paid for the window. I never did that again.
Yeah. Well, now you said your mom sewed all your clothes.
Mm-hmm.
Did you get a big input on what she made, or did you get a lot of hand-me-downs? Or
No, we didn't wear hand-me-downs at all. I never wore any hand-me-downs that I can remember. Because Sigrid was shorter than I was, about 2 inches, and I had kind of broad shoulders, and she was kind of built a little bit daintier than I was. And Rang was never, she was 8 years older than I was. And I remember one time when all of us were home, where the 3 girls slept in the upstairs bedroom right over the kitchen. And there for a while I slept with them, and then Dad made me my own bed. Because it was too hot to sleep 3 in a bed. It was hot up there anyway. And one day, Rang had rouge, she used rouge. She was 16 or 17, and I got some rouge and put some on me. My sister slapped my hand. I'll never forget that. I hated to have my hand slapped when I was about 5 or 6. So Grandma used to come over and help my mother cook for the Thrashers. They'd have maybe 8 or 10 men there helping with the thrashing the wheat and oats, and they always cooked dinner for them. And my grandmother put the silverware on the table instead of in the pantry where it belongs. She put it on the table, and I went and touched the silverware, and she slapped my hand then, so I got a lot of slaps when I was a kid.
Now, one time, didn't your grandma take you to spend the night at her house one time?
One time Aunt Cemoria came over, and I was about 6, I think, or 5 or 6, and she says, why don't you walk home with me, Cemoria? So I said, okay, that would be fun. So about halfway it started getting dark, about halfway over, and I wanted to go home, and I said, I want to go home to my mother. And she says, well, let's keep on walking. She says, we'll soon be to Grandma's house. It was about 3 or 4 miles, I imagine. And she says, and the Grandma's in bed. Well, if she's in bed and asleep, we'll just pour a dipper of water on her and wake her up. I thought, boy, that sounds exciting. But Grandma was awake, so we didn't get to throw the water on her. But she had me sleep with her that night. When I was at Grandma's, she always had this kid sleep with her.
Now, whose mother is this grandma?
That's my mother's mother. She was a real kind old lady. I've got a picture over here somewhere, I think.
Did I take it? No, put it over here. Is this it here, Grandma?
Yeah.
I should have put it right
Yeah. This is my mother's mother and my mother's father and Aunt Cemoria, and I don't know who that little girl is.
What we'll do is zoom
She's
up
one
on
of
it.
their grandchildren.
Okay, let's get it close up at this one. See if we can get it. There we go. So your Aunt Cemoria is the one in the black dress with the lace collar?
Yes, And this is Grandma and this is Grandpa. My mother and father's. My mother's mother and father and my mother's sister.
And that's their house, right? That's fine. You can go ahead and let it down.
No.
I'll get it, Grandma. It's all right. Don't worry about it.
Anyway.
That's their house?
No, this is their house.
Yeah.
Grandma and Grandpa's house.
And so that's one of the places you slept in, right?
Yeah, Yeah, I always slept in, and then they made this. This was a closet for a long time, and when Grandpa got older, he wanted a room of his own. I don't remember I think he chewed tobacco. I'm not sure. And this is where he slept.
Uh-huh.
That's what Audrey told me. They made that room for him specially.
Now that porch up in the front is right behind the porch, the parlor, or?
Yeah, this is dining room right here, and then the living room was over in his area. And they had 2 bedrooms upstairs. It was a nice house.
Did he make it himself, or?
No, it was built, but he remodeled it. He bought it from 2 bachelors. And so anyway, it was really, really a nice home.
What are some of the games you played when you were a child?
Well, I've got this reminisce magazine the other day, and it said that they used to play marbles, and we used to play all those games anti-over. And
what's anti-over?
We used to throw a ball over the house or over the garage, and the fellow on the other side would catch it and come and run, and then we'd run after we threw the ball, and they'd come and see if they could catch us from the other side.
So you would run around the house?
Yeah, we'd run around the house or around the garage, whichever.
Did you ever break any windows or anything doing this?
No.
No.
No, we were very careful. And we used to play Run Sheep Run. We used to play Crack the Whip and a lot of games that kids don't know anything about these days.
Yeah, what's Run Sheep Run?
Well, one would be the sheep, and the rest of them would chase and try to catch that sheep, and whoever caught that sheep would be the next sheep.
So kind of like tag or something like that. Yeah. Now, did you grow up with a lot of relatives around where you lived?
Well, my dad's brother lived next to us, and my mother's brother lived on one side of us, and my brother, they lived on the other side. But their oldest boy, my dad's brother's boy, he was about 10 months younger than I was, and they used to come over and play with quite a bit. And then Enos was about 8 years older than I was, and I used to go to her house because she had a doll buggy and lots of dolls and things, so I used to go over there and play a lot when I was younger.
Well, what about aunts and uncles? Were there any in that town? Did a lot of your parents' family eventually come and settle around there? Or?
No, those were the only 2, and then Grandma and Grandpa were in Mountain View. It was about 3 or 4 miles from our place. And Larson's and Aunt Cemoria, they were all in Mountain View, so we had to drive over. I remember when I was a child, Dad had hitched up the buggy, and old Dan, our horse, he was a good family horse. He never ran away or anything, and Mama would drive us to Mountain View once in a while to visit Grandma and Grandpa, and the Larsons. And then in 1918, I think, Dad bought a Dodge touring car, and then he used to take us around and visit, because Mama didn't drive a car.
Did your mom ever learn how to drive a car?
No, she never learned how to drive a car. And one day we went up a steep hill to get to Grandma's house, and the car stopped in the middle of the hill. It scared the life out of us. After a while, Dad got it started again, but boy, the car kept rolling back, and we thought, oh my goodness, we're going to go in the ditch. And he finally got it started. He was a clutch car, and they were hard to kind of manage in those days.
Right, yeah. Now, did your parents speak English or Swedish to each other?
They spoke Swedish to each other, but they spoke, after I started school, they told us no more Swedish talking. We should speak English, because my mother wanted to learn English. And Dad, he was a road boss, and he was out with other fellows all the time, the English-speaking fellows, and he learned real fast, but my mother didn't learn too fast. But after we started speaking English, she learned faster. And she didn't have too much of an accent. Neither one of them had too much of an accent.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Did they speak with their hands or anything?
No.
When you hear Scandinavian people, they're always speaking with their hands.
Well, I don't remember them doing it, but I can remember Dad. He'd call someone up over the telephone to get him to help to work on the road that day, And his name was Norman Yount. And he'd say, "Hello, Yount, Norman." He said, he get the 2 names mixed up, But Mr. Yount knew what he meant, so he come and work with him on the road.
Well, what was your dad like?
Oh, he was a husky fellow. He was broad and about 5'6". He wasn't too tall, but he was real husky, real strong. He used to get up early in the mornings and make the fires throughout the house. We had a kitchen stove, and then we had, when it was cold, we had the dining room stove. I don't remember what they call it. It had a circulating heater in it and heat the rest of the house. And he'd make the fires in those two stoves, and then he'd fix Mama some hot water, so she put some cocoa in it. He'd take her in a hot cup of cocoa every morning to wake her up.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Boy, that's nice.
Yeah, he was a real fine man. He thought the world of my mother.
Now, how far apart were they age-wise?
Well, I think my mother was 18 when they were married, and Dad was 25. So it was about 7 years.
Well, now, what was his personality like? Was he a cheerful person? Was he a hard
very
worker?
cheerful. Well, he was a hard worker, but he was very cheerful and very kind to us kids. You know, he made us toe the mark. You know, we had to go out and shock hay, and we had to go out and hoe potatoes, but we didn't mind because he was nice to us about it, you know, and he'd tell us what to do and how to do it. I think I started when I was about 12 years old, hoeing potatoes and shocking hay and all that stuff. In fact, here's the picture. Let's see. No, I guess I don't have it. I've got a picture of us shocking hay, though.
Yeah, I did.
Here's our family when we were young. This is me right here.
Okay, just
with the
let me
crooked arm.
focus in. You said you have what?
My hands are. My mother told me to not stand so straight, move my arms a little bit, so I did.
So
move my hands.
You're the one just
with the big hair bow
with
here.
the hair bow, yeah. You want to point out each person in your family?
Each person?
Yeah. Can you
Yeah.
name each of them?
This is my mother, and this is my father, and this is O.R., the oldest brother, and this is Rang. She was 8 years older than I was, and this is me. And this is my sister Sigrid. She was 4 years older than I. And this is Henry, and this is Helgi, and this is Fritz, and this is Victor, and this is Alfred, the two little ones.
So, now did your father have a lot of family pictures taken?
For us, yeah, he'd had a lot of pictures taken. He even took us in the hayfield one time. He just loved to have pictures, and he said, "Get ready, kids, we're going to go have our picture taken." And some photographer would come around, and he'd snap our pictures.
So he's really proud of his family too.
Yeah,
wasn't he?
I think he was. I think he was real proud of his family. 9 kids. We had the biggest family in the neighborhood.
Did you?
In Pleasant Valley. And Dad got the first car in Pleasant Valley too, and he adhered to the teachings of the church. You know, he paid his tithing and took us all to church, and we'd even have family home evening, and lots of times, and before we went to bed at night, we'd kneel in the kitchen, by the kitchen chair. We'd each have a chair and kneel at the kitchen chair and take our turns saying the prayer.
Oh, that's really nice.
Yeah, so we had a real spiritual upbringing, you know.
So, now your parents were converted in Sweden and came over here?
Yes, my mother and her girlfriend heard about the Mormons, and they said, "Well, let's go to one of their meetings." My mother said, "I've heard that they're terrible people." She says, "Oh, we shouldn't go to their meeting." And her girlfriend said, "Well, let's go, just give it a try." So they went, and they were converted. My mother knew right away that they were telling the truth, that they had the real gospel. And so she joined. Well, then my mother and Dad were engaged to be married, and she told my dad, she said she wouldn't marry him unless he joined the church. So one day, I don't know if it was when, it was summer or what, but no, it must have been winter, because they had to cut a hole in the ice to baptize everyone. And there were about 7 of them that were baptized that day. And they all walked about a quarter of a mile with their clothes, in the wet clothes, and not one of them caught cold. So it was a miracle.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Now, what did your mother's parents and your father's parents think about them becoming Mormons?
Well, my mother's mother joined the church. She was baptized when my mother did. But her father never did join the church. And the youngest boy, Uncle Eric, he didn't join the church either, but then after he and his wife were married, after their family had grown up, they finally joined the church. Eric and Anna did.
Mm-hmm. And what about your father's parents?
No, they never joined the church. No, they were still in Sweden. We never did know my father's parents, because they were still in Sweden, and Dad used to write to him and talk about them, but he didn't say too much about them.
Mm-hmm. Now, why did your parents leave Sweden then?
Well, for religious persecutions for one thing, and then my mother had a dream that twice that she should take her children they should move to America, because they lived right by a river, and those kids would have to cross that river to get to school, and she was afraid that something would happen to them. And Dad used to cross that river when he'd go to work, and it was real swift and treacherous, and so they finally all decided to move. They came by way of Liverpool, I think, England, and then they sailed, from Liverpool over here.
So they sailed from Liverpool to New York and then took a train across or something?
Yeah.
And why did they settle in Washington State then?
Well, their aunts, my grandfather's sister and her husband were living in here. I don't know how they got here, but anyway, they were here. And they wrote and told them about how nice it was over here. And my mother's sister Rita was here. Her and her family were here too. And she says, don't bring any of your things with you. Just come like you are. She says, these streets here are paved with gold. And my mother had they had done a lot of weeding, making tablecloths and bedspreads and things that they needed. And they left them all over there. And my mother could have used all that when she got here, because they didn't have any money to buy anything with,
No streets paved with gold.
No streets paved with gold. I'll never forget, my mother used to repeat that. Oh, the streets are paved with gold here.
So what was your mom like then? She sounds like a woman of great faith.
Yeah, she had a lot of faith. We used to have Sunday school. When I was about 6 years old, they started a Sunday school up there. And my dad was made superintendent, and we'd have lessons, I must have been older than 6 years old, because they asked me to teach the Book of Mormon class, and I couldn't even read at 6. I must have been 12 or 14 when they started Sunday school. And I taught Victor, my younger brother, Victor and Alfred and Minnie, and that age group, the younger ones than I was. We just read the Book of Mormon. But the first Sunday of every month, they'd bear their testimonies, the older people would. And a lot of them had tears in their eyes whenever they bore their testimony, because they were so devout in the gospel of Jesus Christ. They were so happy to have found the real gospel.
Well, now, tell me a little bit about your mom. What was she like?
Oh, she was, she was a real good homemaker and real nice mother. She never spanked us or anything. And she just talked to us, when we did something wrong. And she was real kind and she didn't visit the neighbors very much. She just felt she had so much to do at home. She stayed at home most of the time. But the neighbors used to come and visit her a lot. And she'd bake bread and she'd do all the cooking. And then after a while she got I don't know if she had a heart problem or what, but she couldn't do as much as she'd had to walk a chair across. She couldn't carry it because she hurt somewhere. And so that's why we all had to help a lot with the housework, because she couldn't do too much.
Mm-hmm. And didn't she used to be a good singer and play guitar?
Yeah, she did. Her and Aunt Cemoria and Aunt Rita used to sing and play the guitar, but Aunt Cemoria and Mama had the nicest voice. Rita was kind of shrill, and she didn't come over very often anyway. So, and when I was I was 6 years old, I think. I had scarlet fever, No, I was 9 years old. I had scarlet fever, and I was really sick. And doctor, they put me in a bedroom downstairs, and Dr. Smith said, or Dr. Hill said, I should, they should watch me very closely for 2 weeks. So Mom and Dad took their bed and put it in the dining room. That was right next to the bedroom where I slept, and they kept the kerosene lamp burning all night long so they could watch over me. And but I finally managed to get over, and they had to quarantine the family. My brothers had to go up and live in a shack that we had up there to milk the cows so they could sell the milk. And that was for 6 weeks. That was a long time.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that is a long time. Did anyone else get the scarlet fever?
No, I was the only one that got it. Mama was the only one that was allowed in the room with me to come in and give me my food, you know, and bathe my skin with olive oil and stuff. And to this day, I can't stand the smell of olive oil. And so after about 2 weeks, though, I was much better, and they moved there. And Dr. Hill came over after, when he thought I was all right. He says, well, it left her with a weak heart, but she's going to outgrow it, he said. And so I did. Look what I had. 5 children of my own.
Children, yeah. Now, you used to go to a general store, didn't you? Was there a store around where you lived?
Yeah,
and
right next to the school. The farmers all built that school. They called it the Pleasant Valley Grade School. And even Dad helped, you know, build it. All the people that had children were required, because they didn't have government money in those days. They had to do other things on their own.
Right.
And anyway, this Mr. Keyes, he had a store, he and his wife, and they had 3 children, I think. Gladys and Jesse, and I can't remember what the boy's name was. We used to go there and get our penny pencils and buy penny candy every once in a while if we had a penny in our pockets.
Uh-huh. Did your parents ever give you an allowance or anything like that? Or?
Yeah, they get once in a while. They did. If they were flush, why they'd give us, you know, a few pennies. And
uh-huh. What was your favorite kind of penny candy?
Oh, I think it was licorice.
Black or red?
Yeah, red, black. We didn't know it was red licorice.
Oh, really?
Yeah, all they sold there was black licorice, I think. I don't remember ever seeing any red.
Uh-huh. Now, what was one of your Christmases like?
Oh, we had a real nice Christmas. They never started Christmas until the day before Christmas. But they'd start about 3 weeks in advance to clean the house, wash the curtains, wash the windows, make sure everything was clean. Mm-hmm. And I used to have the job of scrubbing the back porch and the front porch with a brush, you know, and scrubbing taking chairs all out, kitchen chairs all out, and scrubbing those with brushes and soapy water. Mm-hmm. I did that every week. You know, that was my weekly job. And then when the older girls left home, then I had to do the kitchen floor, scrub that, and do the mop boards, and you know, all the. Mama was a real clean housekeeper.
Sounds like it.
Yeah. And one Saturday I had forgot to clean the windowsills in their bedroom. And we had Sunday school in there, and there was a cobweb in there. Oh, was I embarrassed, because I'd forgotten to get that cobweb. It was probably forgotten on purpose, because I had so much work to do.
Yeah. Well, tell me about, now, did your parents ever do that St. Lucia thing since they were Swedish, you know?
The what?
St. Lucia, where they put the wreath around a girl's head?
No, we never did, but we used to decorate the tree on Christmas Eve day. And we used to put candles on it, and then Christmas Eve day, we'd sing, you know, take a hand, hold hands, and dance around the Christmas tree. That's what we call dancing around the Christmas tree. We had John Lynn's 5 kids and us, our 9. There was quite a few of us. We always had the tree in the kitchen, because that was the biggest room in the house. We had a kitchen and dining room and a parlor. We hardly ever used the parlor. Just when the missionaries came, they'd we had a bed that rolled down and they could sleep in that. And then we had two bedrooms downstairs and a pantry and a sort of a place we could wash, on the back porch.
Mm-hmm.
And then upstairs, we had two bedrooms upstairs, and then we could use the sort of a attic thing for a bed if we needed to.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to show a picture of your house.
Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah, this is our house. This is our house. It was just, when Dad bought it, it was just this part. But then after, 2 or 3 years, he had the kitchen built on. Our Uncle Cylinder came and built on the kitchen and the bathroom and a back porch.
Now, who are these people in front of the house?
Well, this is O.R., my brother O.R., and this is Sigrid, and this is me, and this is Alfred, and this is Ranghild, and this is Dad and Mom, and let's see, this is Henry, and Fritz, and Helgi. Or Sig. Yeah, Sig's right next to O.R.
Now, how long did your parents live in this house? Did they have this house when they first came over here?
Just part of they bought this right after they got over here.
Okay.
And then they built all this on. And this is my mother and Daddy in their rockings. They had a brown leather rocking chairs that they kept in the kitchen all the time, so they could sit in when they were tired. And they brought them out and sat them on the yard there. And then after a while, Dad made let's see, where's this? Yeah, he made a concrete sidewalk all the way to the fence, and he put up a picket fence in front of our place. And then he put the concrete sidewalk in the back too, going to the woodshed, so we didn't have to walk in that dirt and snow and everything. My father was a good. Oh, this is my Aunt Cemoria and Uncle Oscar. They were married. I was about 5 years old when they were married, and they asked me to hold the rings on the pillow, like they did in those days, the wedding rings. And so I stood behind them and held the rings. And when the minister said, "Well, you can be man and wife," why, I was going to hand them the rings, and they fell off the pillow and rolled all over the floor. So someone grabbed them, and then when he was supposed to kiss Aunt Cemoria, Uncle Oscar says, "Well, I think I'll kiss this little Cemoria too." And I ran. I was so embarrassed. I just ran away. I wasn't going to be kissed by any man.
That's funny.
Anyway, it was. We grew up. We had a lot of fun. Dad would never. One Sunday we went out and played baseball out in the yard, in the orchard. All of us kids, and Dad came out. "Today is the Sabbath day. You're not supposed to be playing baseball. Come on in the house and sit down and read your scriptures." So we went in the house. We never did go out and play again.
So, what did you do on a regular Sunday? How would you describe? I mean, you get out.
Well, a regular Sunday, if we had Sunday school, why, we'd had a lot of people come over to Sunday school, and if Mama had anything extra, she'd always ask them to stay for dinner. She made the best meatballs and fried chicken and apple pies you ever tasted. They just melted in your mouth. And she'd always ask them to stay. And then we had Jell-O for dessert lots of times. And if she didn't have time to make the apple pies, why, us girls would stir up the Jell-O and get whipped cream from the cows, barn. That was real good, and we'd have cookies or cake. Mama made real good applesauce cake. It was, had raisins in it. It was really good.
Sounds good. Now, we never got to a Swedish dinner. What was like a Swedish dinner?
Well, let's see.
What would be a typical, or your Swedish Christmas dinner? Let's get specific.
Oh, we didn't have any special. Maybe we'd have chicken, or we'd have Swedish meatballs and potatoes and vegetables that we raised ourselves, And then a dessert was about all.
What'd you have during Christmas time?
Oh, Christmas Eve, they had a lot of cold cuts and lutefisk. And
Do you like lutefisk?
yeah, I liked it. We had Mama made a cream sauce over it, and then we put allspice over that, you know, sprinkled with allspice. It was real good.
Now, don't you have to soak lutefisk or
Yeah.
something? How did she do that?
Yeah. Well, they used to buy it 2 or 3 weeks in advance and soak it in lye water and then in plain water for 2 or 3 days to get the lye out of it until it was just like a regular soft white fish. And then she'd boil it on the stove and make that cream sauce for it. We'd sprinkle out allspice over the cream sauce, and it's real good. We enjoyed it.
Mm-hmm.
Then we had for dessert, we'd have rice pudding, hot rice pudding. She'd put milk in it or cream in it, you know. It was really good. And we'd have that, sprinkle that with cinnamon, have milk on it, have sprinkle with cinnamon.
Mm-hmm.
And she'd have all kinds of cookies and hardtack and cheese, all kinds of cheeses. She'd made her own head cheese, and then a lot of cold cuts, you know, like bologna and whatever they could find at the store.
Uh-huh. Sounds good.
And then on Christmas morning, we'd have that cold rice with hot milk, and that was good. If there was plenty, you know, she always made a great big pan of rice when she cooked rice.
Mm-hmm.
And we'd eat that and have a toast or cold cuts or whatever we wanted to for breakfast. And we didn't have they didn't go too much for these Christmas dinners like we do now.
Mm-hmm.
They had this plain old food, you know.
Right. Well, what did you find in your stocking on Christmas Day?
We never had a stocking. I don't think I had one to hang up. But she'd always give us a ribbon, or I remember one time my Uncle John Alstrom brought me a little tiny teddy bear. It was about that big, and I was so proud. I was sitting in my dad's lap, and I was so proud of that teddy bear. And then one year I got a doll for Christmas. That's when they had more money, you know, after they'd been here for a few years. And she used to always buy us hair ribbons, because we always wore hair ribbons in our hair. And I don't know, some other little 10-cent trinket I suppose we got, but I can't remember really what we received. Anyway, that's about all I can remember.
That's it, huh? Well, tell us about when you were, what grade did you go up to in school?
I finished the 10th grade,
Uh-huh.
and Fritz and I rode the bus all the way to Blaine to go to high school, about 7 or 8 miles from our home.
Mm-hmm.
A man picked up all the kids, you know, that were going to school in Blaine, and took them out, and then he'd come back at night and pick us up, bring us home. And I was real lazy. I was kept procrastinating on my bookkeeping, and I didn't keep it up. And I couldn't wait to get to in 11th grade so I could take typing. And then my teacher told me, well, she said, you take your bookkeeping home this summer and finish your homework on it. And she says, I'll give you a B next year when you come back. I had got an incomplete in bookkeeping, and I didn't like that very well, so I just quit school.
Did you? Okay, so you never went back to school, so.
No, I didn't go back for the 11th grade. I wished I had graduated. In fact, my dad told me if I'd finish high school, he'd buy me a pretty white satin dress to graduate in.
Uh-huh.
But
did your other sisters graduate from high
they
school?
didn't go to high school. I was the only girl that went to high school.
Oh, really?
Out of the family, but my brothers all went to high school.
Uh-huh. So now, what did you do after the 10th grade then? Did you get a job, or?
Yeah, I worked one summer. I worked for a farmer's lady wife. I got $1 a day for doing that, doing housework and washing her eggs and gathering the chicken eggs and all that stuff, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And then this is when I was 17, and then they heard about me. Someone in Bellingham heard about me, and they wanted me to come there and help this lady while she had her baby. I worked there for a month, and then I got another job. I can't remember where I worked. I worked for a lawyer in Bellingham, and took care of his little 5-year-old boy, as he and his wife, and they had a 12-year-old daughter too. And was there when he came home from school and stuff. And pretty soon I was about 19, I guess. I came to Seattle. I think so. 18 or 19, I think. And I came to Seattle.
Now, why'd you go to Seattle?
My sister Rang was here. She wanted me to come to Seattle. And my 3 brothers were here too in Seattle. So I came to Seattle, and I got a job with Dr. Buckner, Dr. and Mrs. Buckner, doing housekeeping. It was a real good job. They were real nice people. He was the best bone specialist in Seattle at the time, orthopedic doctor. In fact, he'd go all over and set people's bones if they were having problems. He'd go to Arlington and Olympia and places like that and take care of their bones. They didn't have too many doctors who specialized in those things in those days.
Right. Now, how old were you when your mom died? I
was just 20. I'd been married 4 months when she died. We were married in October and she died in February. It's 22nd, I believe. So that was really a shock.
Yeah. When you were younger and you would go to dances, you said your mom and dad would take you down to dances?
Mm-hmm. Down to Birch Bay.
And what would they do while you were at
they just sit and watch and walk around, you know. Dad and Mom have had lots of energy and lots of pep. They like to be with us kids all the time. And they'd maybe go down to the water and sit on the logs in the water and watch the water while we were in the dance hall. They did that to all of us.
Did they? So after you went to Seattle, is that where you met Grandpa?
Yeah. Oh, I was dancing. I went to this IOOG hall. It was a Swedish dance hall. And I just loved to dance. Dad had taught us when we were kids. He had built a garage, double-car garage, so that we could hold our dances there. And we'd take the phonograph out of that living room and put it in the garage and dance to the music. And Dad had come out there and dance with us. My mother wasn't able to dance. She didn't feel good, but he'd come out there and dance with us. And
like what kind of dances?
The hambo and the schottish and all the Swedish dances. He taught us how to do that. And I lost my train of thought.
Well, we were talking about Grandpa, how you met him at the dance hall.
Oh, yeah. And I used to go to Fritz and I would go. He didn't have Mildred then at the time, and we would go to Trin on dance hall. And I met some nice fellows there. One fellow wanted to give me his card, and I told him no, I didn't want his card. He was just a little short guy. And after I'd been married a while, I saw his name in the paper. He became a real prominent man.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And anyway, I'd go home my way, and he'd go home his way. We didn't live close together. And in those days, I wasn't afraid to walk the streets. You know, even at midnight, you weren't afraid of anything.
Right.
But anyway, then after a while, when he started going with Mildred, I started going to IOGT Hall or whatever it was called, and I met Daddy up there.
What'd you think when you saw him?
Well, I thought, he came and asked me to dance. I thought, no, I don't think I want to dance with him. He looks like he's a lot older than I am. Then finally I thought, well, I probably won't get to dance if I don't go dance with him. So I went and danced with him. And he asked to take me home. Oh, I was there with Maureen that night.
Maureen who?
Maureen, Owar's wife.
Oh, Was she his wife at that time?
Yeah, but she used to go to dances with me.
Oh, really?
He didn't care. He'd be working, you know. At least she said he didn't care. And yeah, I think she went with me every time I went until I met your dad. Yeah, Grandpa.
So, what made you decide? Now, didn't he borrow something from you when you two were dating?
Yeah, his car went haywire. He took me for a ride. I think we'd been out to Maco, out at Canton. His car went haywire. Oh, he says, I need a file to fix that, whatever it was. And so I gave him my fingernail file. He said, I'll buy another one for you. He broke it. He never did buy me another one until I bought my own about 2 years ago.
I think I keep two of them.
Well, I bought them myself, dear. You never bought them.
You gave her a fingernail file for Christmas a couple of years ago, Grandpa.
That I bought myself.
She's got a quick complaint. Take her back.
So, you dated. And what did your parents think of you bringing home this older man who was German?
Well, my mother came to Seattle and met him in Seattle because Rang had told her about him, and I guess I might have written about him too. And anyway, we took my mother to a show that night. I can't remember where we went even. And so Daddy said that my mother, when she left us, she said, "How did my mother get home that night? Do you remember?"
I don't know. She said, we take care of you.
Yeah, be sure and take good care of Cemoria. That's what my mother told
Boy.
him.
Yeah. Old Marie's taking care of you,
What?
daughter.
I think you must have driven her home because I can't remember how she got there or how she or what happened, you know.
She approved of it.
She approved, huh?
What?
She approved, huh?
Yeah, I did.
And what about your dad?
Yeah, he approved too. He thought he was a nice fellow.
And they weren't worried he wasn't a member of the church.
No, They weren't. In those days, they didn't, insist on that like they do now.
They just wanted a man who wouldn't beat you, huh?
Yeah, and a good man and someone that could provide for you. That's what they were more worried about than being in the church. And they didn't. We didn't even know about temple marriages. At least I didn't. I don't know. Maybe the rest of them did, but I didn't even know about temple marriages when I got married.
Now, how long were you engaged? Or how did he propose to you, first of all?
No, I think I asked him.
She was getting anxious, huh, Grandpa? So what did you say, Grandpa, when she proposed?
I made her say she'd be good to me and do all the housework.
What did he say?
He said he made you say that you'd be good to him and do all the housework.
Yeah, I sure did, too. I waited on him hand and foot. In fact, I spoiled him rotten. But I don't know. I can't remember. Sig was married about a month before I was. And I mentioned that to Al, and he said she wanted me to have a double wedding with her. And I couldn't see that because I'd always taken a back seat for they'd always, I was the littlest and they didn't think I was mounted to very much, I guess. So anyway, I didn't want to do that, and I told him about it. And about a month later, why we decided to get married. Can't remember. I asked him, or if he asked me, or what.
And so, what did your wedding dress look like?
Well, I bought a red velvet dress with a lace collar up here, white lace collar. It was real pretty, but I had worn it maybe a month or two before I was married, and I just was married in that dress.
So you were only engaged about a month or so? Is that?
About We'd gone together about 5 months, so.
And then you wore your red velvet dress. And where did you live after you were married?
We lived at the University District. We got our little house over there. And it was dirty when we moved in, but I cleaned it all up and polished the stove and everything. And about 3 or 4 months after we lived there, well, we saw another house for rent closer to where Rang lived. And we rented that one. And the landlady came in, and Al told her, well, my wife cleaned up your house good. Yeah, she does. I noticed she's a good housekeeper, he said. That she told Daddy because I'd cleaned, blackened the stove and everything, put blacking on it. And then we moved over to Palatine Avenue, and we lived there until Lorraine was born. And then we moved, after Lorraine was born, Rang and Oscar moved up to the country. And we moved into their house. I think we rented it for $5 or $10 a month and moved in there and lived there until we bought this acreage out here. And then Daddy started building a house out here, a little 2-room house. And in fact, it was this room and that room.
This room in your bedroom? So where did you cook?
Oh, we had our kitchen stove over here. And we had a doorway there.
Oh, let's see. Where was the kitchen? It was
right over here in the corner.
Where the piano was, okay.
No, the kitchen sink, not the stove.
Oh, the
kitchen sink was here, and the stove was right by that wall there. And then there was a doorway right in there.
Right where the fireplace is?
Yeah. We went to. What is it?
Spring out of the house.
What?
We had a spring up on higher up in the house. Had spring water.
Yeah.
Spring water?
Yeah, we had a spring in the back, and we used to go into the bedroom. I'd have curtains right there to close off the bedroom, And when Sonny was born, then we added to that back bedroom.
So you added.
Yeah.
On the other side of this was the bedroom,
Yeah.
right? And then you added the bedroom you're in right now.
Yeah, and the bathroom.
And the
when
bathroom.
Sonny was born. And then we kept on adding the other 2 bedrooms and this kitchen and dining room.
So when did you add on the dining room and the kitchen and?
Oh, I can't remember. As you kids, as the kids.
1956 or 7.
No, we had it before then.
I don't know.
I remember. We had it when Carol was born in '43. We had the whole house when Carol was born. And she was born in '43.
Now, what was it like in the Depression? Being newlyweds in the Depression.
We didn't. Daddy was working pretty much. He got 50